there. I wanted to talk a little bit about some changes to Victorinox's 111 millimeter one-hand opening knives because there's already been some changes made to those and some things discontinued that make some of the older ones kind of collectible in my mind, and I think that's kind of cool. So I think most people are familiar with the Swiss soldier knife that came out in 2008. And I think most people recognize the Trailmaster or Trekker, if you will, as being the civilian version of that. But actually, Victorinox started making a knife very much like this in 2003 for the German Army, called the German Army knife, or GAK. And what they did, they were one of many suppliers for the older German Army knife, you know, the 108 millimeter one that's with the checkered nylon scales. It looks like a lot like the Safari Trooper. But in 2003, Germany wanted a new knife, and they awarded Victorinox the contract exclusively. So what Victorinox did is they went out and they got their Trailmaster with just the regular two-handed opening blade, and they modified that, put this like Spyderco hole on it to make it a one-hand opening knife, because that's what the contract called for. And so they started making a knife very similar to this. It had green polyamide scales, not dual density like this, but has a German emblem here, and you know, you can still, of course, buy those. But so in 2003, they actually started offering a one-hand opening Trailmaster or Trekker. So the Trailmaster or Trekker, the one-hand opening, was actually a civilian version of the German Army knife originally. And in 2003, there were some interesting differences. These differences ran up until 2006, and then they were changed in 2007. But you can see that the opening hole is shaped very differently than it was changed to in 2007. It's much more elliptical instead of round. And of course, it's always been round like that on the Swiss soldier knife because it came out in 2008. But another change they made was with the stamp. They moved it from the tang, where it said Victorinox Switzerland Stainless, to right up on the blade by the hole, where now it just says Victorinox Swiss Made. And I don't know that they did that because they said, hey, you know, we've changed the hole, now we've got more real estate here, you know, let's do something with it. Or if they wanted to put the stamp up there and they had to make the hole smaller to do that. I'm not really sure why. But I think maybe the reason they did this, moved the stamp up here, was in anticipation of releasing the Swiss soldier knife the very next year, where they were going to need that space to put the two-digit date stamp. Anyway, another change that I've noticed on the older ones versus the newer ones is in the liner lock release. On the older ones, it's a very low profile, and on the newer ones, it's very high. It's almost like a coin press. And then they have the word press on it. So the advantage to this is that when you grab the knife, it doesn't bite into your index finger and create a hot spot. So I like that. I've always found that to be a little bit of a problem with these. The disadvantage to this, of course, would be that if your hands are cold or wet, or if you're wearing gloves, this is going to be much harder to accentuate or actuate rather than this is. And again, I think that change might have been made in anticipation in 2007 of them using this knife as the Swiss soldier knife in 2008, when they knew, you know, military personnel would often be in harsh conditions when they use these knives, or wearing gloves. As I mentioned, 2008 Swiss soldier knife, basically what Victorinox did is they took their German Army knife, the one-handed German Army knife they'd been using for about 5 years, and they put these dual-density polyamide scales on, and that became the Swiss soldier knife. One interesting fact about these is that a U.S. company by the name of Poly One was very instrumental in developing them. And I'll put a link to their website and a little flyer that they put out talking about their involvement in developing these scales for Victorinox. It's quite interesting, and these are very sophisticated, by the way. Another change in 2008, when they brought out the Swiss soldier knife, is that they took the Trailmaster or Trekker and they produced a plain edge version of it. And so now, if you didn't want the one with serrations, you could get a plain edge version. I prefer this for a couple of reasons. For me, it's easier to sharpen, and I also prefer a beveled angle blade where it's, you've got an angle from both sides, as opposed to the chisel grind that you find on the serrated versions. That's just beveled from that side. Now, if you want these days a one-hand opening plain edge blade, but with grips, it's possible to do that. Victorinox now has what they call the Forster M grip. It has these scales on it. This is not that knife, but it's a one-hand opening Forster with a plain blade, and they just started making that available on the US website. Now the Forster, of course, is going to have a corkscrew as opposed to the Phillips driver that you find on the Trailmaster or Trekker. And I don't know if I just said this or not. Forgive me if I repeat myself. I'm just going to do this in one take. These were originally called Trailmasters, and they marketed them that way in Europe and in the U.S., but they ran into some legal trouble in the U.S. There was another company that had a very popular knife named Trailmaster, so they had to start marketing this knife as the Trekker in the U.S. and maybe in North America. All right, well, just a look at some differences in some of the one-hand opening 111 millimeter knives. Hey, stay tuned to my channel. I am committed to continuing to do this. I've had some technology challenges, but I'm going to continue to work through those. But I've got some cool stuff to share with you in the coming weeks and months ahead. I've got a couple new refurbishing techniques I want to try. I've got some simple mods I want to try. I've got some equipment to do those things I want to share with you. I've got some Boker Tech tools that you can't get anywhere else in the U.S. except for maybe from me. So I'm kind of excited about that, and I want to share those. And of course, I'm going to have some nice vintage Vicks and Wangers coming up for sale. If you like red A-locks, if you like bales, and you like exposed rivets, stay tuned. All right, thank you for watching.